This is my introductory video to explain why I am walking the Appalachian Trail, and also talk a little bit more about my trail name, which is Stitches. The idea behind a trail name is that when you're walking the trail, you're kind of free and you've left behind everything, and you're basically taking a walk in the woods, which is pretty much what this is. Nothing more than a walk in the woods. So a lot of people get trail names given to them by campmates. Maybe you fall into the fire half a dozen times and you end up with the trail name Ashes. Or you've got a disgusting personal habit that I may be acquiring, and you might end up with the name Snot Rocket. One of the weirdest names I've come across so far is Gut Hooks, which is actually the name of the guy who developed the app that I'll be using along the trail, which is the Atlas Guides app, and it tells you where you are in relation to the next shelter, where your next water supply is. Gives you more information about the local towns and stuff that you might be going through. And his name was Ryan Lynn. He was a hiker and went on to develop a really useful app called Gut Hooks. So that's a bit about trail names. Stitches comes from the fact that I do a lot of embroidery. My mum taught me and my sister to knit, sew and crochet from the time I was about 4, so I've always had some mini project on the go. I don't do as much as I like, and I do want to do more. So now I'm kind of into this three-dimensional embroidery, which I don't know if you can see, that is one of them, and this kind of thing. So those are two that I really enjoyed doing and I hope to do more of them. Stitching is also, I kind of write poetry, and the essence of poetry is basically stitching words together. Like just a few words will create a really emotional feeling, or make you look at something differently. So, you know, rather than like a long story with lots of words, the short words that count in that. And I guess I've always, stitching footprints comes from the fact that obviously when you walk, you create footprints, and if you look at footprints in the sand from a distance, they kind of look a little bit like a seam of stitching. So that's where all that kind of things come from. And talking about ancestors, meet David Stanley Christmas. Well, actually David Stanley. So I've named my pack in honour of my grandfather, who was called David Stanley. David Stanley is currently weighing in at 40 pounds, which is fucking ridiculous in comparison to what everybody else says on the forum. 20 pounds is considered a heavy backpack, so bearing in mind you have to put food and water on top of that. Kind of gets you up to around 30 pounds, and that's considered, or shall I say not considered, scorned on by some ultra lightweight packers who do the trail with 10 to 15 pounds. So yeah, I've been walking with that, and I'm still alive, still not had a knee replacement as yet, so that's kind of what I'll be taking. It is winter, so it is winter weight, so some of that stuff I might end up sending back home. Don't know, it's currently -4 out there, so I probably end up sleeping my life-saving bivy sack over my sleeping bag for the first week or two, but hey, it's all good stuff. So David Stanley, he was my grandfather, and he was an explorer, and I'm going to get a little picture of him. So that's him in the background with my grandmother and my dad as a little boy. And we kind of grew up knowing that he was an explorer, and his brother emigrated to Canada. Not sure sort of what age he was, but sort of around the 20s, and in 1926 David Stanley left to join him in Canada to work as a farmhand, probably about 4.5 years, when he was 19. So he started off kind of exploring, and I know my dad always wanted to go to Winnipeg and retrace his father's footsteps, but due to ill health and in later life, but more importantly having these little guys, which was us, to prevent him doing that. So I kind of feel like I'm doing this for my dad, who never really got to explore. So David Stanley kind of left Canada via New York in 1926. This is my dad's stuff that I'm reading out. He kind of took lots of notes of it. And he left to commence a journey to South America to colonise a new tract of territory where the government of Bolivia had given special facilities for a settlement on the Paraguay River to a party of British ex-officers. So he left on board the Vestris and travelled steerage to Rio de Janeiro, where he arrived on the 9th of January. A train journey taking 10 days, owing to a revolution in Mato Grosso, meant that he didn't get to Port Esperanza until later on, where he then took on a 50-mile journey through the forest to select a homestead along a marshy clearing on the eastern bank of Lake Gaiba. So this didn't actually work out, because when he turned up, the parcel of land or whatever that he staked was completely and utterly unworkable. He had a friend, he'd gone with his friend Jack Ketch, and they got into a bit of trouble. There was always talk, my dad said, of soldier ants marching through his father's legs, and he arrived back in England. He was repatriated, entered the Hospital for Tropical Diseases in London for treatments to legs which were covered in sores, and he was discharged on the 6th of November 1928. So he suffered ill health after that, and he kind of died quite young. He was 57, my grandfather, when he died. So that's about him. So my dad always wanted to explore, always wanted to travel, but never got a chance. So I kind of feel like I'm doing it for him. Obviously, you know, I married a traveller. So that gorgeous beast there, when I first met him, wouldn't think twice of hopping on a plane going to America. And we went to Kenya and Thailand and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, Steve's all about travelling. Kind of opened my eyes when I was quite young to doing that kind of thing. And his parents, mid-80s, popping across the pond, no bother on them at all. So that's obviously carried on to my daughters. So Emily is currently in Canada, where she's been spending like a year abroad, and she'll be off, I'm sure, going to many, many places. And then obviously Maddie, currently exploring other realms at the moment. Obviously she loved being in Uganda, and I'm sure, absolutely certain, she'd have ended up in a rainforest somewhere, given half a chance. So I've never backpacked much. Never. For me, I always thought the weight was going to be too much, but actually I didn't realise you can get a whole ton of really super lightweight gear that I still managed to have accumulated an awful lot of, to get up to 40 pounds. But yeah, I've always camped, always never been afraid of the dark, never been afraid of the woods, always kind of hanging around the woods with strange men, and take my kids around the woods with strange men as well. So that part of it, that side of it, I will feel totally and utterly at home on the trail. For me, I think it's going to be quite a healing process. And yeah, another little traveller there. Mr. Raykeith doesn't want to be left out, I'm sure. So yeah, so for me, stitching footprints, kind of stitches, bringing all the threads of the ancestries together, kind of what my life's about, what I've kind of, where I am. That's what I'm kind of hoping, that a long walk in the woods may be the thing that'll clear my head, get me back on track. So it wasn't actually my idea to ever walk this Appalachian Trail, and that's where life's a little bit strange. I met a girl when I was at school. I was 11 years old, walking up the Millstreet Hill to the bus stop, which is kind of by Tesco's now. And I saw this girl in a school uniform, same as me, walking downhill. I said, "How come you're walking downhill? Why don't you come up to the bus stop at the top?" And she did, and we caught the bus together to and from school every day from then on, from the time I was 11 till I left school 16. So if it hadn't been for that conversation, I would not have even known about this, because sort of later on I met her for coffee. She said, why don't we do this for our 50th? What do you think? And I talked to Maddie about it. She said, yeah, I've got no problem. I can let you go for 3 weeks. And I was like, babe, it's going to be about 6 months. So Steve kind of not mad up for it, but, you know, happy to let me do whatever and support me in whatever I'm doing, which thank you, Steve. So that's kind of why I'm here, because now I've actually got the time to do it. Emily's off for the year. Steve wants to go to India and all that kind of stuff, so he can travel as well. Hopefully come find me at some point with any of his cousins, brothers. That would be great. And yeah, so that's kind of about it. So I'm probably the only person who's mad as she is. We have that kind of special madness that makes me really excited and want to do this and pit myself up against something that is solid, like a hench project. That's where I am. So that's a bit about me, a bit about my trail name, why I'm doing it. My next video will be a gear video. So if I've already bored you senseless with the shit that I'm taking, you can skip that. And then hopefully every Friday, maybe for the weekend, I'll sort of try and get a video of the trail, maybe video what I'm looking at, any highlights. I'll do kind of not too many, because at the end of the day I am walking every single day. That's all I'm doing. What did you do today? I walked, I ate, I slept, I got up, I walked some more. That's it, 7 months. So yeah, I don't want to be boring and repetitive, but my life will be boring and repetitive, I'm sure. But yeah, I might take a few highlights, any bears, snakes, rattlesnakes, funny incidents, Spork Gate. There's another future story. All right then, thank you.